quarterbacks and look right at the top of the draft here, we got Joe Burrow, kind of the unanimous number one selection on all draft boards. And it's really just a matter of when and not if he's going to be that first name called. So entering last year, though, he really wasn't in too many top 10 or even top 20 quarterback prospect lists. So before we dig into that evolution and what kind of spiked for him, what do you see the Cincinnati Bengals, unless they trade that pick away, getting in Joe Burrow?
Yeah, I mean, the place I always start with Joe Burrow is just to say that Joe Burrow is just a different kind of dude. And that's really, that's how his best friends have described him. He's just a weird, and I mean that in a good way, a weird, just kind of lives in his own world kind of person. He has weird interests. He just kind of lives on his own island, and it's just his only things he really cares about are football, and that's about it. I mean, everyone loved him on the team, everyone followed him, but he's a guy who not that many guys have ever been to his apartment. He doesn't really go out much or anything like that. He just lives football. So that kind of will explain our next question, which we'll get to later. But just kind of when you look at how this all turned around, you have to start with he is just a hyper competitive, hyper focused person who is one of the most competitive, and I can't exaggerate this enough, the most competitive human being I think I've ever met in my entire life, and that's almost unhealthy way. I mean that again in a good way. But yeah, so what they're getting in him is a guy who has all those traits, a guy who is one of the faster processors of information that you're going to find. And I think that's what everyone always asks, what does Joe Burrow do great? And I always say, I think, people will point to his ability to make plays, make broken plays, or people will point to his accuracy, things like that. And I just start with his ability to process information. He is a brilliant, and that's why him and Joe Brady were such a great match, which we'll also get to, is that he's so great at reading a defense, knowing what he's looking for, knowing how to see what's happening and then make a decision in a split second. That's exactly what needs to be the right call. And the line he always uses, no matter what a defense gives me, they're wrong. Whatever they try, they're wrong, because that's kind of how him and that offense were built. So I think that's what he's great at. He's great accuracy, and he's a guy who, he just kind of has that, I hate talking like this, but he has that kind of it factor that will just make things happen. He's one of the strongest guys on the team. He's one of the best athletes on the team. He's obviously a great passer. And yeah, you're going to find guys with better arm strength, but I think you would probably agree that I just think that's an overrated strength in modern football these days. Obviously you need some zip on it, but yeah, I think it's more about accuracy and processing ability. And that's what I think the Bengals are getting.
I think growing up as a New England fan and just seeing Tom Brady over these last few years, I think highlighting that cerebral nature, the competitiveness, the ability to read defenses and always pick out their weakness and how you can attack them is far more important. Obviously the guy can make all the throws, but to have that nature is generally what does separate even the greats to the elite level. So maybe he does have that if that's the case with that cerebral nature. But how did he jump so much from this junior to senior season, going from a maybe top 15, top 20 quarterback prospect to now the no-brainer elite, number one pick? You'd be an idiot to not take him there. What kind of transformed him this year, do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the more fascinating things. Okay, I always start with this. I think you have to start with the fact that he entered LSU, and I believe he didn't come to LSU until June or July before the season. So he had almost no time before that 2018 season. He didn't really know his receivers. The offense was a brand new offense coming in that was kind of messy to begin with. So he didn't really have that connection. It was kind of brand new to him. Then you go to the offense, which I think can't be understated. I think it was a mess of an offense. I'm somebody who's a Steve Ensminger defender, and we'll talk about him. And I think he's a good play caller, all these things. But I think that was a scheme that was just kind of getting thrown together. They were trying to go spread and modern, but they didn't quite know how to do it yet. So the offense just didn't quite work. They were doing a lot of 7-8 man protections really often, which just doesn't work. And then so all of a sudden, he had an offensive line that was second or third worst in the SEC. It was a disaster of an offensive line in 2018, and then you're running this offense that's pretty much only sending one or two receivers out. So both he doesn't have much time in the pocket, even with these big protections. He has almost no one to throw to, so they're easily covered. It was just kind of a mess, and so it made him look pretty bad. And he was put in all these bad situations where it looked like he couldn't handle pressure. Which, don't get me wrong, that's something he improved, but he had all these things because if anything, I always look back on that season and people point out how kind of bad he was. And I say he actually, if you watch those games closely, he was the reason LSU went 10-3, won a Fiesta Bowl, finished top 10, because he just managed those games so well with given so little. And then you go to, I think so, then you have that first full off season. You actually have the time to, and he's a grad student, right? And he's just taking online classes. He'll be the first to admit it. He doesn't really worry about school much anymore. So he just pretty much spent his entire life working with Joe Brady and Steve Ensminger at just ridiculous rates. I mean, they would just sit together forever, and he was basically the third offensive coordinator. They wouldn't put anything in the playbook unless he liked it or he agreed with it, and then pretty much they would build this together, and then Burrow would be the guy and who he organized all these big players only workouts and practices and all that, and basically would be the guy who was almost like the extra coach who would teach them in the players only workouts how to run this offense. And then you add in on top of that, those workouts, which you can't understate, because anyone who watched those games, I mean, as much as you want to talk about how good Burrow is, the timing that him and the receivers had was everything. I mean, they 100% knew what they were doing at all times, and that sounds so obvious, but it's such an underrated and huge part of this process. So he put ridiculous amounts of time with those receivers to build that timing. And then the last thing Jimmy Burrow, his father, will tell you is it's kind of an overly simple thing, but it's true, is that in 2018, Joe Burrow hadn't really played quarterback at a real level in 4 years. I mean, since high school. So, and now he's going into SEC West football and kind of thrown into the fire. So I think that was a huge part of just he had to learn how to play quarterback at this level. And then he had a year of it. Then he had the time. Then the scheme came with Joe Brady, which again, as I was saying, is a huge part of this and then I know Burrow put crazy hours into his footwork, because that was the biggest thing he saw that he kind of messed up in 2018 was he used to have this amazing footwork, and he did all this work with these tech guys in California at QB3D, and then that, he kind of got away from that. So he fixed his footwork, and it just kind of was this perfect storm. And that's a really long answer. I apologize. But
no, I love all the details, man. Keep it going. This is fantastic stuff.
So I think that's kind of how he made this leap, is that it was just a combination of all those factors, and then him putting in just an absurd amount of time.
Absolutely. And this is kind of a little bit off script here, but with the risk of at least losing this offseason and potentially some of the 2020, if not, hopefully not, but maybe all of the professional season next year with everything that's going on in the world right now, you mentioned that building the timing, building the rapport, and kind of nailing that all down. Are you worried that his transition to the NFL might not be quite as smooth because of all these external circumstances, not having that time to really work with AJ Green and Tyler Boyd, assuming, again, he goes to the Bengals, maybe not having the time with the coordinators? Do you think that could significantly hurt his progress, at least a little bit? What do you think that might impact have on Joe Burrow here this year?
No, I think it's a great point. I think it would be naive to think it wouldn't. I mean, again, you have to view it in two different ways, right? In one sense, you have to view it as everybody in the country is dealing with the same problem, so it's not necessarily going to be him more, but no other first overall pick quarterback, which we all know has the most pressure out of anyone. We're going to be watching every pass he throws, every game he plays, and scrutinize it. So for him to be the one quarterback ever to have this bizarre offseason at first overall, and to be able to not seamlessly go in, I think it would be naive to think it wouldn't be a huge part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Fantasy Wolf, if you haven't already, share your thoughts, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolf Pack by subscribing below.